Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Last week we were in Caleta and that video got loads and loads of views, so it made sense for us to go up to Corralejo this week. So that's part one of the video that we're going to show you now.
Also, quite important in this week's news, it looks like there's going to be a requirement for tourists travelling to the islands to have a negative COVID test. So we're going to talk more about that towards the end of the video.
So stay tuned for that. Let's roll the bit from Corralejo. This week we're back in Corralejo.
Yeah, it's been quite a while since we've been here. It was probably August when the Spanish tourists were here and it was quite busy then. Relatively quiet at the moment. We're expecting it to get a little bit busier over the next couple of weeks with the restrictions in Germany and the UK being lifted.
We've got a few errands to run today here, so we thought we'd bring the camera along and we'll show you what it's like at the moment. So we showed a couple of new places in Caleta last week. This time it's the turn for Corralejo. So there's this new bar called Quadrophenia. Looks pretty cool in there.
It does look pretty cool. I like the look
Done a
of
good
that.
job in there.
Bit of shabby chic going on.
Yeah. Nice decor. What's it say? Coffee bar, surf shop. Yeah, looks pretty cool.
Doesn't seem to be
It's
open
not
at the
open,
moment.
otherwise we'd have probably popped in and had a nose. And the other new place is this Uga, which says it's a bakery, lounge, cocktail bar. This is the old fake Gordon Ramsays.
Yeah. Don't know how they got away with that for so long.
No, they did get away with it for a long time, and then it kind of sat empty for a long time as well. But they've completely done that out by the looks of it. It looks quite nice actually.
Yeah. Nice view of the ocean.
So this is the other view. So they've got a nice big terrace space there actually. And that's definitely an improvement to this little area. Cantante is really busy. It always tends to be pretty busy in there. There's a few people on Town Beach today, but not many. It's a little bit cloudy. Still quite nice and warm though, isn't it? It's about 25, 26 degrees today. There's a new Indian restaurant here just off Music Square as well. It's next door to Bombay Masala. It's called Indian 2020.
It smells good.
It does smell very good.
Even through the mask.
So just going to have a quick walk through Music Square and back around towards the harbour. Obviously it's the middle of the day. What time is it now?
Nearly 4 o'clock.
So see, this doesn't all get busy until much later in the evening.
Yeah,
It's going to be
a lot quieter than the last time we were here.
yeah, I think at the moment still weekend evenings, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, going to be the busiest.
Yeah. I mean, Music Square anyway is more of a nighttime venue, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I'm not sure there'll be many restaurants open at this time in the afternoon. There's probably going to be one or two here, but I wouldn't expect it to be busy here either. Yeah, it's the usual couple that tend to be open all the time here. But I don't know if you remember from one of our previous Corralejo videos, we showed you there were some nice tiles here. Well, there's not any more.
Somebody's had it away with the tiles.
I don't know what's happened, but they've gone. Maybe they'll come back, maybe there'll be something else there, who knows. There's usually a couple of bars just off the side here that are sometimes open. Yeah. This is a nice little spot down here for a drink as well.
It is, yeah. Could easily spend a few hours down here.
Yeah, it's just next to Fuerteventura restaurant. There. Just nearly walked into a chair. It's not a good move. Should probably watch where I'm going. We've shown these on previous videos as well, not so long ago, so again, you know, pretty much everywhere down here now is open again in the evening, which is good. So we've had a little walk up to the harbour area here. It's a nice view, isn't it, from here with all the boats. There's also a nice view of La Lonja, which is a new bar and restaurant. We'll pop down there and have a look. This is the building with all the really nice artwork on the outside. And they've opened the terrace area right out now, so there's a lot more tables and chairs there.
It's a great little spot, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to give this a try at some point, put it on the list.
I mean, that artwork's been there for a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Not the bar.
And I think the menu is fairly similar to what they used to do, so there's seafood and things there, but it just looks a lot nicer.
Cool.
Excursion booths are all open again now. So if you are planning on coming out and you want to do boat trips or go across to Lobos or even Lanzarote on the ferry, that's possible. There's quite a lot of different options here. It's like the glass bottom boat and jet skis, all sorts of different things to do. So this is probably the place to come down to if you want to chat to them about pricing.
Never been here before.
What's it called?
Anno 2011 Beach.
It's a really good little spot actually. They've got lots of seating, really nice view of the beach.
They do good coffee as well.
Good coffee, which is important for you. Could become a new little favourite here.
Yeah, I think so.
This is the main street in Corralejo, as most of you will recognise. It's looking a lot busier than it has the last few times we've been here. There's a few more places open as well, including the frozen yoghurt shop here that's quite popular. I think it's probably fair to say that it feels a little bit busier here than it has done in Caleta, but Corralejo doesn't rely so much on British tourists like Caleta does. But it's still nowhere near the sort of levels you'd probably expect if it was kind of normal times, which obviously we're not in at the moment. But a lot of places that are closed have started to give reopening dates, so I've seen quite a few bars and restaurants on social media say that they're planning on reopening from the 1st of November, which is good news. Hotels are a lot trickier, and I can't possibly give updates on every single hotel here, there's just far too many, so my advice on hotels if you're coming out anytime soon is to phone them direct, don't email them. They've got lots of emails to work through. Pick up the phone, just check that they're open before you come out. But yeah, it's definitely a few more people around, which is a good sign. So Corralejo definitely felt like it was gearing up to see a few more tourists. Felt a little bit busier than Caleta had the week before.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very quiet, but we've been hearing that demand's pretty high for flights and packages over here, so we're expecting it to get busier in the next couple of weeks, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. UK and Germany have seen, big demand in bookings, so yeah, we'll have to see. Obviously there is news this week about testing. We went to Corralejo on Wednesday. We did this kind of sit down to do a little bit of an update on the testing yesterday. And as is the nature of stuff at the moment, things change overnight again.
Yeah, so we've got more information about it now. So the stuff we recorded about this yesterday, we've had to scrap.
Yeah, start again. The important news is that yesterday afternoon, the proposal to test tourists checking into tourist accommodation across the Canary Islands was approved, which we had been expecting given what we'd been reading over the last week.
Yeah, so we just want to be able to share with you what that actually means if you're planning on coming here for a holiday.
Yeah, definitely. definitely. So this is going to apply when you try to check into either a hotel or regulated tourist accommodation on the island. So it's important to say first of all that the procedure at the airport won't change, will it?
Yeah. You're not going to have to present a negative test at the airport. That's not how it's going to work at all.
Yeah, they couldn't do it through the airport because of various legal issues with freedom of movement. So that will stay the same. Passenger locator form and a temperature check on arrival at the airport. But if you've booked a hotel room or you've booked a private holiday let, then you will have to present a negative test result that's been carried out in the previous 72-hour period of your arrival. And you know that's going to be quite a big thing, I think, for not only for tourists to consider getting a test, but also hotels and private rental owners having to actually manage that here. So it is going to be quite a big change. There's going to be, I imagine, an awful lot of information about this over the next few days.
I think it's also, just to clarify, it doesn't have to be a negative PCR test, it could be a negative antigen test as well, couldn't it?
We're waiting for the final decree to be published, which hasn't come out this morning, so we think it's going to be tomorrow, and that will 100% clarify this. But from what we've seen of the initial draft, that's right. There's 3 types of testing for COVID. There's the PCR test, there's a rapid antigen test, and there's a blood antibody test. From what we've seen, a PCR test or a rapid antigen test would be sufficient for this, but not just the antibody test, because that doesn't show if you've actually got it at the moment. It just shows whether you have had antibodies at some point.
I think also at this point, just to say, if you're coming here in the next week, don't panic, because there's going to be a grace period, if you like, once the decree is actually published, in terms of when it actually comes into effect. So it certainly won't be coming into effect within the next 7 days.
No, the Tourism Minister here confirmed that yesterday, that it will be 10 days from the date that the decree is published. So we're probably looking around the 9th or 10th of November, something like that as a date. But once we've seen the decree, I will put a pinned comment down on the video description of this video just to try and confirm that date once it's actually been confirmed by the government here.
Also, it's not going to be applied to children under the age of 12.
No.
So if you're travelling with kids younger than that, then they don't have to have a negative test.
Yeah, so we have seen some detail on this from the press conference, and the Cabildo here have released a PDF document sort of covering off the main points. So as Sarah said, this will apply to anybody aged 12 and over. The test has to have been done within the 72-hour period of you arriving to check in to your accommodation. We believe at this point in time it can be the rapid antigen test or the PCR test, but you have to be able to show either on a physical piece of paper or an email that it shows your name, the date that the test was done, the lab that conducted the test, and the confirmation of a negative result.
So basically proper official documentation.
Yeah, it's proper official document. That can be an email according to the documentation we've seen so far. The onus is on the hotel establishment or the private let to actually make a record of this, and the initial paperwork references some forms that they'll have to complete, and the health authorities here can go and do spot checks on those at any point. What I would say is there's going to be a lot of questions, I know, about will this apply to me if we're staying in an unregulated holiday let? I suspect that the wording of the decree will just talk about regulated accommodation, but I wouldn't rely on that if you're coming on holiday here.
Yeah. I personally wouldn't risk it just in case. And I know it's a pain. It's a pain trying to get a test done, isn't it? I know that. And plus it's an extra expense. But if it was me travelling somewhere, I wouldn't want to run the risk of not having that documentation and then being expected to supply it.
Yeah. The other thing you need to remember, of course, is that the passenger locator form that you complete at the airport asks for your address on the island. So you are going to have to give that to an official source. we don't know what kind of spot checks they're going to do. Yes, it may be that the owner of the holiday accommodation is ultimately responsible, but you don't want to mess around with the police here on the islands or the authorities. If you're coming on holiday and you've either paid for a hotel or you're paying somebody private for an apartment or a villa, I would assume that this is going to apply to you and you should get the test done.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, you could arrive here without a negative test and try to check into your hotel accommodation, but you won't be allowed to, and you will then have to go and get a test done whilst you're here. Now, whilst that might seem to be an attractive proposition, A, if you can't get a test quickly enough at home before you travel, or B, because you think it's going to be cheaper here. Again, personally, I wouldn't run that risk for a few reasons. First and foremost, you're going to, potentially test positive, because we know there's a high incidence of false positives with PCRs in particular. So what happens if you then test positive? That's your holiday ruined pretty much. But also, you're going to have to scramble around trying to get a test done once you get here. So that's going to at least take the first day of your holiday away from you. And again, the enjoyment and the anxiety about whether, am I going to test positive or negative? And all that.
It's not a good idea for a number of reasons. We know from the draft and the documentation that we've seen so far that there is the provision there for you to get a test on arrival here. So if you turn up to the hotel without one, their requirements is that they have to have a list of local places that they can refer you to so that you can go and get a test and pay for it here. Now, the issue with this is that obviously clinics might not be open if you arrive late at night. The documentation does suggest that the hotel would allow you to check into your room, but you wouldn't be allowed to leave the room, is what the documentation says, unless you are going to go and have the test performed or you're going to go and collect the results. So in that intermediate period, you'd basically be locked in your hotel room.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would be policed, but that's what the wording says. The other thing is you're assuming that the clinics here are actually going to be able to perform a test relatively quickly. And we know from experience, we went to talk to one, didn't we, yesterday?
Yeah. For research purposes, we went into a private clinic in Coletta yesterday morning. They advertise a rapid test, so you get a result within an hour, which sounds great on the face of it. But we went in and chatted to the lady at reception, and you actually have to book the test in advance, and it's 48 hours in advance. So your rapid test of an hour, in effect, turns into 49 hours. And from what we understand, if that was the case on arrival here, you'd be confined to your hotel room for that 48 hours while you're waiting to go and actually have your test done. The cost was €80, wasn't it? And the other thing was, that was a little bit disconcerting, not to criticise the lady at reception, but she seemed to be completely unaware of this new legislation that was coming in, and she seemed to think that people were going to either be tested at the airport or presenting their documentation at the airport, which obviously isn't the case. So that was kind of a bit of a cause of concern for us, wasn't it, that they didn't seem to know?
Yeah, I think there will be a lot of people that are maybe tempted by the cheaper test pricing here to wait. Obviously that's up to you, but we're just saying we don't think that's a good idea.
I'd say last resort, if you can't, for whatever reason, get a test done before you come out here, and absolutely can't, then there is going to be an option of getting a test done here. But I would say last resort, because getting a test done could be an issue to how quickly you can get it done, but also what if it's positive?
Yeah, at the moment what we know is that Tenerife have said, their Cabildo, they've identified one hotel that will act as like a quarantine centre. So if any tourist does test positive, then they wouldn't be allowed to stay in their original hotel that they booked. They'd have to be moved to this designated hotel, and you'd need to quarantine for a period of 14 days.
Yeah. Well, that's like I said, that's your holiday ruined, isn't it? That for me, that wouldn't be an option. No. I would do whatever I had to do to get the test done before I went away.
No, it's very early days. Obviously, the press conference was only last night, but I fully anticipate that all of the other islands will do the same. They'll allocate one hotel, a small hotel that could be used in this method. What we won't know yet is who would have to pay the cost of that accommodation. Common sense would say if you've turned up on the island and you're deemed to be positive, that's probably going to be on you. Would your insurance cover you? We've got no idea.
Yeah,
it's just not a good idea.
I'd say even if all that was paid for, you don't want to be quarantined for your whole holiday period, do you? So I wouldn't even contemplate risking that personally.
Now, obviously, I've put some things on Twitter and Instagram already about this. I'll continue to do so once the decree comes out. The initial reaction, I have to say, has not been particularly positive from tourists' point of view on this. I understand that. We know that there's a disparity between testing costs across Europe and in the UK. A rapid antigen test here is probably 40 to 50 euro, whereas we know in the UK it's somewhere between 100 and 150 pounds, depending on who you use.
Yeah, I mean, straight away, obviously, it's bumping up the cost of your holiday, and I understand that's not ideal, but this has been introduced to it. It's trying to maintain safety, whatever that means, within the islands. Obviously, the numbers here are low, relatively low compared to the mainland, and certainly compared to the UK and Germany now. And the locals here are concerned that with tourists coming back, that the numbers are going to go up. So it's trying to maintain that balance, I guess, really.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion on this is that they had to do something, and obviously they've worked around various legal loopholes to try and see what they could do. The airport was off limits fairly early on. This is pretty much all they can do. There's going to be hundreds, thousands of people that continue to arrive through the airport that this, won't apply to. Not least, people from the mainland coming to stay with family and friends. That's been the main source of local infection. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in terms of the rates and, how the local people react, if cases do go up. We don't know yet, but...
I think the thing is, regardless of your opinion about it, regardless of what my opinion is about it, it doesn't really matter. It's gonna happen. So I guess you either swallow it and say, okay, I'm prepared to add an extra cost onto my holiday in order to be able to go there, or you don't. And there's kind of no way around it, really.
No, I mean, what we might see, and this is just speculation, TUI and Jet2 and other tour operators, they might have to come up with some sort of subsidised solution to this.
Yeah, well, TUI Netherlands are incorporating it within their travel package. So if you're travelling from the Netherlands with TUI, they will actually test you before you get on the flight at their own cost. So, it would be useful, wouldn't it, if other airlines or package or tour companies did the same sort of thing.
Even if they could offer a subsidised rapid antigen test for, around £50, that would be potentially more affordable. But we haven't seen any response from them so far. I think it's so early on with the approval news of this that they haven't even acknowledged it yet, let alone come out with any sort of clarification around what would happen if you choose to cancel your holiday as a result of this. So, if you've got a booking in the next month or so and you're worried about this, you're probably going to have to wait a couple of days and then maybe speak to them to see what your options are.
Yeah. I understand the knee-jerk reaction. People are upset about it who are planning on coming here on holiday, but like I said, I guess you either have to put up with it and suck it up or cancel your holiday.
Yeah, it would be great if the UK actually regulated the cost of their testing to fall in line with prices across Europe, but it doesn't look as if that's on the cards either. I know on my Instagram, one of my latest posts, there's people being very helpful on there, sharing sources of where you can go and get private tests in the UK. So maybe have a look at that. I'm sure there's lots of information online as well if you search for it. Before we go, we should probably clarify who is exempt from this as well. So if you're travelling to the island and you own your own property here, you don't need to have a test because obviously there's nobody for you to go and check in with that you'd need to present this to. So you'd arrive at the airport as normal, travel to your own property and enjoy your own holiday. Likewise, if you're coming here and you're staying with friends and family that are already on the island in their own property, you won't need to have a test done. If you've been on the island for at least 15 days and then try and check into a hotel, then you wouldn't need to present a test. So that's one exclusion. If you're a resident of the islands, you don't need to present a test, provided you declare that you haven't left the islands in the last 14 days. So if we wanted, when this comes into effect, if we wanted to go to Lanzarote for the evening, we can say we've been within the islands for at least the last 15 days, therefore we self-certify almost that we don't need to do a test. So that's the same for residents and non-residents, provided you've been on the islands for that previous 2-week period. So that is an exclusion. But for anybody else arriving onto the island that's going to check into a hotel or some kind of tourist accommodation, you would need a test. So that's kind of all we can really say at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, if anything changes or if there's anything else to add, we can always update you on your Instagram or Twitter, can't we?
Yeah, obviously those links will be on the video, so you can follow me on there. I will, as I said, I'll put a pinned comment on this video as well, so that will appear right at the top once we've actually seen the decree and we can clarify all of this. But all of the information we've shared so far has all come from official sources as a result of yesterday's press conference. It's as accurate as we can possibly get it at this point, but we didn't want to put this week's video out without talking about this.
Yeah, it's quite an important change. So.
It's a big change. We'd only get a load of comments asking about it anyway, so that's what we know at the moment. As ever, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
See you soon.